Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
And I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nancy.
And we're thrilled to be here with you this morning. And I don't get to see you very much anymore.
I know.
So it's like Nancy comes in after Dr. Grampy leaves, and I'm like, my old friend.
I know.
And it's,
I know.
you know, and then we go to do a show. We should just chat on the show is how I feel. Very excited. We got a big show today.
Yeah, we had two great guests.
Really wonderful. A mom who created something. Aren't you amazed always when moms find their niche?
Yes.
Like the powerful things that happen.
Right.
And her child had reached the cliff and she went, there's nothing. So she created something.
Started something.
And we all get to benefit from it. And then I'm looking for my names here.
The poetry.
The
poetry man.
Donnie Welch. Donnie Welch is going to be with us talking about sensory reading and his sensory reading starter kit working on poetry, which I just thought was amazing.
Yeah.
So, but first we have some news, and you know, we always try to give you a mix of the good and the bad, and so we're just going to jump in and give you the bad news first. And then we'll get to some better news and some interesting stuff along the way.
In the bad news we've got out of Samoa, there have been 2 one-year-old infants who have died after a routine vaccination, MMR vaccination.
Within minutes after receiving the vaccination. That country, immediately upon hearing this, has pulled the vaccinations for the moment. They said that they're not going to do anything until further investigation. They have put the hospital staff that was involved in giving the shots in a secure place because they're fearful of retribution against them because they don't know whether it was the way in which it was injected or if there was something that was wrong with that batch. I mean, they just don't know at this point. But 2 beautiful infants whose, you know, you can't even imagine for the families. So for the moment, that has all been put on hold.
Yes.
And devastating.
Yes,
unimaginable.
it is devastating.
Unimaginable. Okay, so and then we had a story here in LA over the 4th of July that I don't know about you, Nancy, but had me on the edge of my seat.
Very, very upsetting.
Very upsetting in so many different directions. But a nonverbal boy was located in Union Station, which is a very busy place in Los Angeles.
He was only 4 years old, little boy. They say.
4 years old, and apparently abandoned by the mom. As stories unfold, it becomes more and more interesting. But in the news, they were saying to all of us, you know, the boy was not able to communicate. We don't know whether he's deaf and or has autism.
Right, and they
at this point,
he wasn't deaf.
Yes, and at this point, we don't know for sure whether he is, in fact, on the autism spectrum, but he was unable to communicate. Apparently, they have on the security tape him and a woman with a stroller walking through Union Station, and then at a certain point, the boy was hanging out by a cafe. One of the cafe workers noticed it and didn't see the mom anywhere. And then eventually the mom came back in, and the cafe worker basically, according to the people standing around, said to the mom, "You need to take care of your kid." And she turned around and walked out.
Right.
And I don't know what was going on with this mom, and I don't know about you. When we report on stories like this, it is impossible as a mom not to judge when somebody abandons or hurts their child. I apologize, but it is impossible not to judge. I try really hard not to, but you know.
Yeah, we don't know all the circumstances behind it, but she has been arrested.
Yes.
On suspicion of felony child endangerment.
And we reached out to the LAPD to ask for more information. They haven't gotten back to us yet, but I just want to say, in the light of this, somebody wrote something to me, and I want to maintain their anonymity, but it was a mom who is very well respected, and she said, "I need to be honest, that there have been times that I have considered suicide because of dealing with the autism and how it affects my life." And it spurred a conversation amongst a bunch of moms on Facebook in some very quiet corners, which I know not everybody is privy to. And it really, I don't think that we can say enough that everybody at some point is at a point where it's dire.
Desperation.
Right?
Yeah. Where they feel extremely desperate and there are no options.
Right. And for some people, that period of time might be a second, like a flicker, and it's gone. For other people, it can be years.
Yeah.
And I think it's super duper important that we all talk more about it.
Right.
That we make ourselves open to hearing from people who are in that desperation, that we all put it out there and say, if you need help, if you need me to take your kid, if you need a break, so that we don't have people walking away from their kid in Union Station, or worse.
Harming their child.
Right. Or harming themselves.
Or harming themselves and their child, which has happened before.
Yes, absolutely.
Where parents have done, both.
And I always want to be respectful, and I know for people that are on the autism spectrum, this is a very black and white, cut and dried thing, that that they get very upset if they feel like you are in any way siding with someone who would do something like that. And I want to be clear, we're not.
No, it's just we're showing some sort of empathy and compassion.
We're trying to put something in place before that happens, so that a person on the spectrum doesn't get harmed.
Right.
That's really what this conversation is about. And I think there is shame when people are feeling desperate or dire or not knowing where to turn to, and so they retreat into themselves. And I think that sets up a circumstance where bad things happen.
Yeah.
Don't
let it get there.
I can speak for myself. When I was being hit, I was in a very bad place, and I arrived at CARD for my clinic, and I said, somebody has to do something because something bad's going to happen. I don't know what. And
I can speak for myself in saying that I was at that place at times in my life where I felt like I just can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah. So, but you've got to speak out, and you got to ask for help. And sometimes the first bit of help isn't helpful, right? Right. You got to keep asking. You got to keep asking and ask everybody and loudly.
Until you can get some support.
Yes.
And here's an interesting story out of Scientific American that brains of children with autism show unusual folding patterns.
And I found this fascinating. Again, Scientific America, you can read the whole article. They're two separate studies that found different things. Now, we've heard before that it appears they've been doing a lot of MRIs on children with autism, and it appears that in some kids that the brain just all of a sudden gets bigger at age 3. But this is the first time that we're seeing information about folding and folding patterns that are distinctive for people with autism. And it appears that there are different folding patterns with different ages.
Yes, that in the brain's outer layer, the cerebral cortex, is more intricately folded in school-age children and adolescents with autism than they are in the controls.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
And that for the preschoolers with autism, they don't show exaggerated folding unless their brains are enlarged, and that one particular region in the brain is atypically smooth in preschoolers. And that when you connect, if you read the whole article and you connect to what parts of the brain, it really goes hand in hand with the issues that our kids have.
Right.
It's, being able to organize and complete tasks, it's social, so fascinating. And they're looking to figure out why.
Right.
Why the folding is happening, because this could be a key to why autism is there. Really fascinating. So go ahead and read about both those studies in Scientific America. And then ending on what I thought was a really good note, that NPR did an article, and you can read the whole thing. They did little vignettes of different individuals on the spectrum in New York, and of all different abilities and ages.
Yes,
and
very wide range.
And what their STEM toys is.
Yeah, what they use to STEM.
What are the things that they obsess with and like to keep with them and play with them.
Comfort.
And I don't know, I just found this, when you see the breadth of it, it just normalized it.
It does. Yes,
did you feel that way too?
It did, and I love the explanations of the different individuals of why they use the things they use, and what it gives to them, what the feeling is that they have from using it.
And for some people it was like a certain backpack, and for other people it was a toy, and it may not be an age appropriate toy, but like when you read about why they liked it and what they liked to do with it, I don't know it. I just wish that everybody would read it.
Right.
It's a great article, and you can read all of these, and they have pictures of the people.
Right. Great portraits.
With beautiful portraits with their STEM thing, the thing that they're excited about. I just loved it. Want to thank NPR for that. And the title of it is Autistic New Yorkers Share Their STEM Toy Stories with After Effect.
Which is the podcast.
That's the podcast.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was what the after effect of the STEM toy was. Thank you. I didn't realize that was the podcast.
Yes.
I just thought that was super duper funny. And again,
Very
you can find that on NPR.
Yeah, it's a
Fabulous.
great story.
Okay, so our two guests today. First up, we have Liz Kane, and she's going to talk to us about Shire House, which I'm very excited to meet her.
Yes, me too.
And then coming up later, Donnie Welch is going to talk with us about poetry.
About poetry.
Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman. We're here doing allergy-free cooking, and I brought my sister with me today.
Jamie Davis, thanks for having me.
A lot of people are asking about a allergy-free breakfast, and breakfast can be full of crap.
But it's full of crap
cereal.
and it's hard to do. We don't have time in the morning. We're in a hurry.
We're going completely nut-free. The recipe is not.
Personality, we can't do anything
can't
about.
do anything about that. So we're going to start off first with. I'm using sorghum and brown rice flour. I find the texture good, and I've added some flaxseed meal. We talked about that last time, flaxseed meal for poop. Almost every one of our kids has a poop issue. What's next on the recipe is the quinoa flakes, baking powder, cinnamon, and the xanthan gum. It brings the glutinous texture back into the flour, and often what happens with these recipes is they can fall apart. This one holds up nicely. I like it. For the folks that are egg-free, we have a ton of egg replacers. One of those can be the arrowroot starch or bringing back some additional flaxseed. So there's a lot of options to go eggless, but we're going to go egg full in this one. For sweetener, I use the maple syrup. I stay away from refined sugar. What I'm adding now is the coconut milk, maple syrup, and a little bit of the coconut oil. And we're going to add in the raisins, craisins, and chocolate chips at the end. I find that chocolate chips can coax people to eat some really amazing things. When we started, Jeff had 42 food allergies, so we had to get creative in how we cooked. So nuts were a big, big issue. What I like now is that he can tolerate so many more things after start doing this diet. So let me show you how you can deal with this sticky stuff here. You get your fingers really wet, and you can push it down. So my oven has been preheated. It's at 350 degrees. So we're gonna just throw this in. Like I said, I like it around 23 minutes, and the magic oven says, I'm done. Looks like, don't you love magic ovens? They're awesome. There we go, pops right out. The texture of these, and it's so pretty. It looks almost like a big chocolate chip cookie, but you actually made it healthy. But you can be my guinea pig. Tell me what you think.
It looks really good.
Doesn't it? So the textures and the colors in there are just beautiful. So the raisins are for you, the chocolate chips are for your kid.
I can't believe it's gluten-free.
I know, right? It doesn't taste like, crap. We're wrapping up another cooking show. If you have feedback, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We're, of course, on Facebook. You could go to facebook.com/autismlive. And, of course, Talkin' Now has thousands of recipes. Join me there, and we can cook some more later on. So thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get.
We're so excited because we have our guest, and she is with us, joining us via Skype, Liz Kane. Do you want to talk a little bit about Liz?
Liz is the founder and executive director of Shire House. Before starting Shire House, Liz had been a full-time mom to her daughter Anna and son Paul. The decision to remain a full-time mom was made after Paul was diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 5. And previously, Liz's work history was in business management, and now she's running Shire House. Welcome to the show, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
It's such a thrill to have you here. We were saying earlier that the power of a mom, a mom. You know, they what is it? Necessity is the
The
mother,
mother of invention, yes, and
I
so
think
many things have grown out of that.
absolutely, and I love the word mother in there because so
Right.
often we see in autism.
Where's the mother?
Sometimes
Yes.
it's dads, but a lot of times it's the moms who are like, "There's nothing here for my kids, so I'm gonna make it." So tell us your story. When did you start Shire House?
A year after my son graduated from high school in 2012.
Okay, and where are you located, Liz?
We are in San Jose.
Okay, San Jose.
California.
And
Yes.
what was the pressing
Why?
need?
Why
Yeah.
did you do it?
Well, we were surprised to learn my son graduated on a particular day, and in making his arrangements for the following week, you know, psychiatrists, counselors, therapists, and so forth, we were told that all of those services dropped because he had graduated with a diploma.
Uh-huh.
If he had graduated with a certificate, then those services would have continued for, you know, a few more years or indefinitely, depending on the need.
Right.
So that's where that awareness came about, and we started trying to figure out what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And there weren't a lot of service providers for over 18, just because the need is so big in the school systems. They tend to use the providers that are available. So again, that being aware of that need, all of those issues have been addressed through Shire House now.
So it's almost like a detriment that he graduated with a diploma because there was nothing left for him, no services.
Correct. Yes.
And how long ago did he graduate? How many years ago was that?
He graduated in 2011.
Okay.
And tell us exactly what the structure is of the program. What is Shire House?
Well, I structured it to meet not just the services that Paul still needed, but he also wanted to go to college, and I wanted him to have the college experience, the college dorm experience. So we wanted to have a house, and we now do a large house with co-ed. We have, so the kids are 18 through 28, and they come with us while they are attending college or wanting to, and we help them with that process. Sometimes they don't want to go to college, so we help them through the employment process, search and finding and so forth. Our in-house services are more therapeutic. We address any behavior or emotional or social issues that the client might have that are keeping them from doing or being where they would like to be at this stage of their life.
Tell us a little bit about the typical Shire House resident. Who's that going to be? Who's it right for?
Shire House is appropriate for someone, a young adult who, like I said, wants to attend college but needs the supported living environment. Someone who's learning to manage a more severe emotional issue like depression or high anxiety. And they come to us and we help them learn to manage that particular diagnosis so that they can, again, start living the life that they envision themselves to live.
So is it
also might be.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Is it primarily for kids with higher functioning autism and Asperger's?
Yes, we're addressing that particular niche of the spectrum.
Okay.
And it could be men or women,
Mm-hmm.
and but
Yes.
but largely between the ages of 18 and 28.
Yes.
Okay.
But then, because like my son is just turned 25, and he was our first client, but he has transitioned out because we are a transitional program. We help them transition into whatever dependent living setting that they choose, whether it's a college dorm or their own apartment, or we've also created what we call our shared housing model, where the young adults go and live on a more permanent, less supported living. So that's another need that came about, and we found a way to solve that particular need.
And you also address social issues mentioned behavior, but you have begun to address social concerns, correct?
Yes, we've addressed those from the beginning. A lot of our young adults need those support, social skill interventions, and then we also have that's why we started our social opportunity, the Friday night social, where we open our doors to other young adults on the autism spectrum. And the guests do not, it's not just for high functioning, it's for anybody on the spectrum. So we have a variety of levels of function that come to our Friday social.
And that's every Friday from 6 to 9, correct?
Yes, and we've been doing that a few months after we started Shire House, and it's every Friday, even if it's a holiday. They need that consistency to know that there's a place for them to go. And it's been really neat to see, throughout these years, the young adults make friends, and then continue and build on those friendships, and which leads us to our mission, which is, creating that community for them.
What is the goal that you would like your clients to reach, Liz? What's the overall goal?
Their particular level of self-management and independent living. So some of our clients that have transitioned out, they might still need some supports in some areas, so we continue to provide those supports at the independent living setting that they are now in.
Okay, let's talk turkey for a second, because my overwhelming question here is, what is the cost and who's the funding source? Is this all private pay, or does the regional center help to defray cost, or does insurance? Who pays for this?
Well, most of our clients do not qualify for SARC, or did not qualify for a regional center because they were considered too high functioning. So we also a nonprofit. From the beginning, we incorporated as a nonprofit. It is private pay. Our monthly fee starts at $4,500, and that includes room and board and the supportive services that I've mentioned. But it depends on the level of supports that the client needs, but that's the highest cost there is. And then as a nonprofit, we do fundraising for our scholarship fund, because not every client is able to meet the costs.
Yeah.
So we've always had one or two clients on a scholarship.
Wow. Well, it's certainly a wonderful thing, and I wish that places like the regional center would look at this and see that what is the alternative. That we can't just be saying, okay, you got a diploma
and goodbye.
There you go. We hear Joanne Laura talk all the time about it's the school to couch pipeline for our kiddos on the spectrum. And so, somebody's got to see that funding needs to be made available for this population.
Right.
And yes, what would you like to say, Liz?
Well, I totally agree with you. Right now, we are not doing any sort of advocacy at a state level. We are in conversations with the regional center as to how Shire House's services can be offered to those that are SARC client. But we're in those conversations. It's not something that has started.
Well, I want to ask you to do me a favor, because it's programs like this that give us all hope, right? And if you will just continue doing what you're doing and keep good records and take data on the outcomes, eventually we'll be able to take that and put that in front of people who get it, and do something with that. So I want you to keep doing what you're doing, but keep the records and take the data.
Yes, we are.
We need to have what you're doing on a larger scope. That's for sure.
Yes, and we have helped two other families start a similar program in their state.
Oh, great.
Not using our name, but again, from the beginning, I wanted to build this in a way that we could share it with other parents that wanted to, had a home maybe and wanted to replicate what we were doing.
Right.
And
So if people
again,
want to reach out to you, Liz, because they either want to have their son or daughter be a Shire House client, or because they want to create this program where they live, how can they get a hold of you?
the best way is to email me at liz@shirehouse.org.
Okay. And if they go to shirehouse.org,
they can
too,
find out
they
more?
can find out more information as
Yes,
well.
our website.
Well, I
yes.
think it's remarkable, it's that spirit of the mom who's going to make something happen one way or the other,
Right.
that cannot be denied.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So we
Right.
salute you, Liz, for how is your son doing?
He's doing well. He's actually more social than now than we would like him to be, and, so that he can focus and finish his degree.
Ah,
Very good.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what a great story. Thank you
Well,
so
thank you
much
for
for
what
all the
you've
work
done.
you're doing.
You're very welcome. Thank you
Okay.
again.
All right,
care.
thank you. Good to have you with us.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're going to take a short break, and then we're
Yes.
going to come back with Donnie
Donnie
Welch,
the
who's
poetry man, I call him.
sensory reading.
Yeah.
This starter kit that he's
That's
got
very
that is
cool.
really, really fascinating. If you're a teacher, you're going to want it. If you're homeschooling it, you're going to want it. Can't wait to talk to him
Great
about
way
it.
to
It's
make
just
poetry accessible to our
a-
kids. Yeah.
Yes, I love it.
Okay, we'll take
All
a
right,
break.
stick
We'll
with
be
us.
right back.
Riley has high-functioning autism, and I'd say I noticed somewhere between 9 months and a year. Looking back now, I can tell you everything. I mean, there was no pointing, there was no shared experiences, speech was not coming, the interactive play was not coming, those things weren't happening. You go to the pediatrician, they tell you, well, sometimes boys are slow or things might take a while to come along, but it still wasn't happening. And right when he hit the 2-year-old room in preschool is when the wheels fell off the wagon. That's when we got some intervention. That's when we figured out, how are we going to address this problem. The first thing I did was I got a mentor, because there's no book on what to do with your autistic child. I mean, there's many books, but each path is individual. So I got a mentor, a really nice woman named Marlene. She has a daughter with Asperger's, and she told me, go to a psychiatrist so you can have your child fully diagnosed and a rock-solid diagnosis that can't really be attacked. Call CARD and do whatever they tell you to do. That was probably the thing she talked about the most. Get in touch with CARD. And she actually put me in touch with Evelyn from CARD. And calling CARD was like amazing, because I really felt like things were finally going to be okay. We were going to get the help we needed.
We tried a number of different things before we could get into CARD, and you could really see the difference in the data keeping, really addressing what his issues were, whereas the other places we had been, it seemed pointless to me.
We've talked about this, and I feel like we met a lot of really nice, well-intentioned people.
Right.
And then when we got to CARD, we met a lot of really nice people who could help us because they had the experience. It was ABA, which I think is the only way to go with your child if you're trying to overcome autism. And if you go to CARD, the people are so qualified, and there's so much of a database on how to approach this. It's just like they come right in, and we started off with, let's have Riley sit down for 2 seconds, because he couldn't even get that. And we worked on baby steps until now he's in 1st grade and he's working at grade level. So it just starts with baby steps, and it keeps working on, because they have a way to approach every single problem, every single tantrum, every single thing you're going to come up with. They have a way to approach it and help you get through it.
Yeah, I'm
and help
always
Riley get
amazed,
through it.
like at our clinic, we'll be having a specific problem, and how good they are, all of them, the therapists and your team leader, at coming up with a solution, something to try, and it almost always works. Whatever the particular behavior you're trying to deal with, they're really good at them. They know the answers.
He likes a lot of stuff I think regular 7-year-olds like. He likes to swim.
He loves to swim.
He's a fish. Likes to ride a scooter, loves Toy Story, loves playing on the iPad.
Love Justin Bieber.
Thought you all be mine.
Good job, buddy.
High five.
High five.
High five.
We are back, and as promised, we now are joined by guest Donnie Welch. Donnie teaches creative writing at the Rebecca School in New York City. He's been working in neurodiverse education for over 4 years, is a published poet and children's author, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his work in this poetry workshop model he's doing, and in the sensory motor poetry. It's the sensory motor poetry workshop. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
It's a thrill. We love to have fabulous educators on the show. We can never get enough of that. So thank you so much for joining us. Talk to us about what sensory motor poetry is.
Sure. So in a nutshell, sensory motor poetry is a poetry model that involves movement, right? I like to describe it as a workshop that's grounded in social emotional learning, based on the idea that movement learning and literacy learning go hand in hand, right? That movement helps us understand rhythm, rhythm helps us understand poetry, and that poetry helps us understand each other.
Love it. But for people who've never seen this in practice, what's that look like?
Sure. So there are two kind of modalities of it. One involves a lot of messy tabletop tactile sensory play. And so in that, we'll break down the imagery of a poem per se. So in a poem like Shel Silverstein's Alligator's Toothache, I might have a whole model alligator made out of Play-Doh, like a model alligator head. And then I'll have students put the teeth up all back together as a group. So it's a collaborative effort. You know, you got everyone working together towards a common goal. And then as the groups develop and mature together and grow together, we get a little more active. We get a little more movement-based. And what that looks like is a group of students supporting one another in a circle while one student reads. And so there's this interchange of reader and beat keeper, and it's something you might see as part of a hip-hop cipher or a bluegrass round or something reminiscent of jazz or big band where each player takes a turn playing a solo. It's this kind of empathic back and forth of reader and supporter that plays into that social emotional work and gets students working on reading and excited about reading and writing.
And you're doing these kinds of things with kids of all different kinds of abilities, is that correct?
Correct.
And what are you finding?
That it's a lot of fun.
And they're learning, right? Isn't that the big takeaway, is that when you make that kind of a rich environment experience, they're learning on all different kinds of levels?
Absolutely. I like to describe it as social emotional literacy learning. There's one little story in particular I love to tell where we were working on this poem about Transformers in one of my groups, one of the more movement-oriented groups. And in it, this student realized that we had used the pronoun he a bunch of times. And we were writing, I believe the lines were, Ironhide busted his leg during a fight with Starscream. He couldn't get it back, so he got a peg leg. And this student was like, wait, we've said he too many times. Who are we talking about? And when this other student heard this little question, they stepped up and they said, well, there's only one character who has a busted leg, so we must be talking about Ironhide here. And it was this amazing peer critique moment where these two students were able to give each other this little literary feedback based on one another's creative work and based on their genuine interest in each other's creative work.
And how old were those students?
So that was like a middle school age group. So I believe 13.
But these are the kinds of conversations that we all long for, right? To be able to have our kids reading something and delving that deep into it.
And why is poetry, of all the enriching artistic activities, why is poetry so important, especially for the population, the autism population?
I think poetry in particular is a genre that's so interested in voice. It's something that you talk about in fine arts settings, it's something you talk about in community settings, and this idea of voice is central. And it's central to what I'm doing with the workshops as well. I like to say that the workshops are a tool to practice self-expression and in turn self-advocacy. And there's this wonderful quote actually from Dead Poet Society which right after the scene where Robin Williams has his kids tear the introduction out of the textbook. And we don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we're members of the human race. And I think there's this innate desire to communicate an inner life, regardless of your neuro makeup or regardless of your ability level. And I see poetry in particular as my personal passion, as a vehicle to help these students express their inner life.
So talk to us a little bit about how this workshop got started and where you hope it's going to go.
So it started in the library during summer school, actually. I was approached by one of the education directors at Rebecca School, and she asked me if I'd be interested in starting an affinity group. And I said yes, because, as a poet, the idea of running a workshop in New York City is the dream come true. But I didn't really know what I was going to do, so I went in the first day with a Shel Silverstein poem and a ball of model magic, which is just like, I don't know if it's off-brand Play-Doh, but it's a kind of Play-Doh, and went at it. And from there, it slowly over time grew. It started with 5 students. As I got more comfortable and as my lesson plans kind of grew in complexity and began to have a focus, those 5 students slowly turned into 5 groups, and those 5 groups slowly turned into seeing a majority of the school. And I'm hoping to keep spreading it. Next year, I'll be moving into a more part-time liaison role, Rebecca, with the hopes of reaching out to other institutions, other schools, and bringing it into community settings as well.
And you recently self-published a sensory reading starter kit that has 25 workshop plans. Tell us just a little bit about that. Shannon's got it right here.
It's great.
Yeah, thank you. So that first year after the just rolling in with model magic incident, I took some time to really think about what I wanted to do. And so I wanted to keep it tabletop for that first year, and I started getting a little more imaginative. The alligator's toothache lesson I told you about at the start was really one of my first. And so the sensory reading starter kit is a collection of my lesson plans from that first year. And so it's 25 lessons that all involve fun, messy, tactile, hands-on play that relate to different poems. And some of the poems in there are from really canonical names like Langston Hughes or Emily Dickinson. Some of them are from more contemporary authors like Richard Brautigan or Dorothea Lasky. But all of them and all the lessons involve taking these abstract ideas like imagery, like theme, like motif, and making them something hands-on that parents and teachers and students can all have fun with together.
And how can they get this starter kit?
So if you visit my site, it's www.donniewelchpoetry.com, and then you go over to the shop section, it'll be right there.
Okay.
Really remarkable. It's, the thing is they're very well written lessons. It gives you everything that you need in one column, the materials in the prep, and a parent who's never taught before could do this.
That's a good endorsement from you.
Yes, it is. But a teacher can take this and run far with it, right? But a parent, I know many of you are homeschooling, and what's great is that, as I see this, you can be hitting literature standards and art standards while you're doing sensory play with your kid that your OT would be thrilled with. Have I got that right, Donnie?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wrote it with the intention of parents and caregivers in mind. You don't need to have an MFA or a BFA or any kind of A to really just do it. You just have to be willing to have fun with language.
Okay, great.
It's really remarkable. So again, your website, let's put that back up there one more time, DonnieWelchPoetry.com. We think you're a remarkable young educator.
Thank you.
And so if people would like for the workshop to come to their school, do they just get the starter kit or can they actually have you come to the school?
Both. Yeah, I'd love to have my starter kit end up in new places, but I would love to come to new places too. On my website, there's a contact page, and it just goes right to my email, and I'd love to get the conversation started. And next year, I'm looking for a lot of new places to collaborate with. Yeah.
And do you ever just go and educate educators on how to do this?
Yeah, recently I've done a lot of conference work. I've been fortunate enough to travel kind of around the East Coast and a little bit into the Midwest doing different conferences. And I'd love to start getting into schools and really working with educators to get excited about running some poetry workshops.
Fabulous.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us today, Donnie. We've appreciated having you on the show, and good luck with the program.